So, today we are talking about something that a lot of us women over 40 are dealing with, and that is burnout versus menopause. Burnout versus menopause, and how to tell the difference because, to be honest, they can seem exactly the same. So, let's talk about how to tell the difference and, more importantly, what we can do about it once we figure out which one we're dealing with. So before we get into that, I just want to share with you that my name is Nicole. Welcome. I am a nurse practitioner here on this channel. I am helping Black women to create the life that you want to live rather than the one that has been assigned to you. Here on this channel, I talk about things related to health, wellness, travel, nutrition, because I personally believe that health is wealth and that for us as Black women, travel is a form of therapy. So if that is something that sounds interesting to you, please go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button, share this video with a Black woman who may be interested in things like this, and let's get into today's topic. So I am going to be looking down at my notes. But, one of the things that I'm beginning to realize, because I have a lot of friends over 40, a lot of Black women that I like to hang around that are talking about things that are going on in their lives, and that is burnout and or menopause, and the fact that at times it's difficult to tell the difference between what you're dealing with. Because the symptoms are oftentimes very similar. Both burnout and menopause have components such as exhaustion, brain fog, irritability, mood swings, low motivation, and also problems with sleep. And so one of the things that I think plays a role in this with us as Black women is the fact that oftentimes when we are experiencing these symptoms or these signs and symptoms, we can be dismissed. If we're talking about we're not motivated or we have low energy or we're feeling more tired, those are symptoms, especially in the healthcare environment in this country, the United States, which is where I live, it can be dismissed and not really fully investigated. And so not only can it be dismissed by our healthcare system, but sometimes we are dismissing it ourselves. You don't have to have someone dismiss it for you if you're dismissing it for yourself, right? If you're not tuning into the things that your body is telling you and you're ignoring it and you're pushing it off and you're pushing it down and you're pushing through because that's what you are accustomed to doing. So we don't always get the clarity that we need and or the care that we need. And so I think it's really important, for us as Black women to, number one, recognize when we're not feeling like ourselves, take the time to tune into that and validate our feelings. And sometimes it's good to document that, right? To remind yourself of what's going on, what's the pattern involved in things of that nature. So if you watch any of my other videos, you'll notice that for me, one of the things that I often talk about when I'm talking about things related to health is that I think it's really important for us as Black women to begin to trust ourselves with how we feel about our bodies and our health, and to take the time to tune into what it is that we're feeling. Because I think that especially for us as Black women, oftentimes we have pushed those feelings aside, and at times we're not really consciously aware of how we're feeling or what's going on because we've been suppressing it for so long, because many of us have been in survival mode, right, for a long time. And that doesn't mean that you're broken or anything is wrong with you, but it just means that sometimes we have to give more attention and intention to being aware of what it is we're feeling and keeping track of that. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about what is burnout and what's involved. So burnout is really the result, of course, of chronic stress. It's a mental and an emotional exhaustion. right? From just doing too much, either mentally, emotionally, physically, or all of the above, right? But it's usually from work, or usually from caregiving, from constant pressure, from stress, from things that you're going through, from life. You can begin to feel detached or overwhelmed, or you can start to feel as though you're empty, but it's really not hormonal. It's the nervous system, right? The nervous system is just overwhelmed, overworked. Your cortisol levels have been too high for too long, and at some point your body just can no longer take it. Whereas with perimenopause is a natural, normal transition into menopause that is hormonal, and it can actually start as early as in your 30s. So with perimenopause, your hormones are starting to change, your estrogen levels, your progesterone levels, your estradiol, your hormones are shifting. And symptoms that can sometimes be associated with perimenopause would include things such as hot flashes, night sweats, changes in your periods, like irregular periods, weight gain, especially like belly fat. Mood changes, joint pain, those types of things. So unlike burnout, of course, perimenopause is hormonal. And so your estrogen, your progesterone levels are shifting, and that can begin to affect a number of things. In fact, we're beginning to learn more and more each day that it affects more than we thought in the past, including your brain function, your sleep patterns, anxiety, depression, things of that nature. And so let's talk about how to tell the difference. So quickly, to tell the difference, fatigue can be involved in both burnout and perimenopause. Hot flashes, of course, you are not going to experience hot flashes with burnout, but you can definitely start to feel hot flashes with perimenopause. And I will also say not just hot flashes, but hot flushes. You may not necessarily have a flash or a very significant hot flash, but you might have a milder, just hot flush is what I call them. Brain fog, you can have that with both, either burnout or perimenopause. You can experience that, but it seems oftentimes to be, depending on the severity of the burnout, it seems to be a bit more profound with perimenopause and getting into menopause, where it doesn't improve with rest necessarily. Mood swings can occur with both perimenopause and burnout. Irregular periods is something that typically one does not experience with burnout, but with more perimenopause. Feeling detached or feeling cynical, feeling that type of stuff typically happens more so with burnout. And then having anxiety and insomnia has been associated with perimenopause. It can also be associated with burnout, especially if burnout is chronic. So if you are chronically burnt out, chronically having stress, then yes, definitely you can start experiencing anxiety. And some of you have been down that road, so I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. But definitely, if your periods are beginning to change, hormones are likely at play here. Hormones are likely playing a role here. If your workload and your stress levels are constantly high, then burnout is likely playing a role. But the interesting thing is that it can be both. You can be experiencing both burnout and perimenopause at the same time. And one thing that I find really interesting but also beautiful about women who are over 40 is I find that women over 40 oftentimes are coming to a crossroads in their life, and are oftentimes evaluating their lives and beginning to make changes that better align with their desires. And so what I often see is this can involve career shifts. This can involve prioritizing your own personal growth, your own personal health, just a shift overall in perspective with what you're willing to give and what you're not willing to give your energy to. And what I am finding is that oftentimes women are moving away from the acceptance of others as being the priority and more into a space where they are wanting to accept themselves. We are wanting to accept ourselves. That becomes more of the priority. And so I love that for women over 40, oftentimes we do begin to recognize the value and the importance of prioritizing our health and our wellness and becoming more aware of the things that are not contributing to our health and wellness, and beginning to eliminate or alter those things in our lives so that we can continue to be healthy for the long term. Another thing that I find that's beautiful about women over 40 is the increasing confidence, right? Becoming more comfortable with your body and beginning to recognize that you can be more aware of what's going on in your body and beginning to advocate for yourself, for what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, and being one of your own best friends when it comes to your health and wellness journey. And so I think a lot of times what happens to women over 40 is that overall women over 40 are experiencing a more authentic form of themselves, a more empowered way of living, and just a greater depth of self-awareness. And that I think is really important, because I think it plays a role in beginning to recognize the difference between burnout, because sometimes what's happening is women over 40 are beginning to set boundaries. Sometimes they find themselves in a place in life where their parents are aging, but they still have children. And so that can lead to a lot of stress, which may also lead to burnout. And so what do you do, like, as a woman over 40 if you find yourself in this situation? The first thing I think is to give yourself grace, right? Take a pause, give yourself permission to pause, to take a break, to begin to try and weed out exactly what is going on, to begin to take note of what you're feeling and when you're feeling it. Because oftentimes, if it's burnout, you may find that when you're not exposed to certain situations or people or activities, that you are not feeling as burnt out, but you may not be aware unless you begin to slow down and kind of pay attention, take note, and recognize when you're feeling the way that you're feeling, whether or not it's burnout. So the next thing that I would say is definitely reflect on your overall lifestyle. Are you taking care of your health? Are you getting enough water? Are you getting enough sleep? Because if you are, and you're really not under a lot of stress, and you can't really identify any reason why you would be burnt out, then definitely you're going to want to look into what other sources could be contributing to you feeling this way, which leads me into the third thing, which is definitely seek out professional guidance, right? Go see your doctor, go see a nurse practitioner, or whatever the case may be, because definitely if you are making changes in your life and you're not seeing any improvement in your overall energy or with how you're feeling, you're definitely going to want to seek out some professional guidance, because sometimes it is something clinical, it is something medical, such as low vitamin D or a change in your thyroid function, which is very common, right? Shifts in hormones. And one of the questions that I kind of get is, I have women, especially over 40s, or women who are wondering about whether or not they're having symptoms of menopause, who are wondering if they should get their hormones checked. And yes, I think that getting your hormones checked is an option, but I also like to let women know that we clinically don't necessarily need to check your hormones in order to diagnose you with menopause or perimenopause. So if you go in and maybe you have in your mind that you may be dealing with menopause and your hormones weren't checked, specifically your estrogen levels or progesterone levels, that is okay. That's common. It's not necessarily as clinically important to know exactly what your hormones are doing in that moment. For us as clinically, it's a little bit more helpful to know what your hormones are doing over time. What are the trends? And so I think it's valuable for us as women to maybe check our hormones to see where we're at as far as a baseline. And if you have access and resources and opportunities, and you're 35, I think that's a good time to go get your hormone levels checked so that you know what your baseline is. So that way in the future, you know, when you hit 40 and then when you hit 45, you know, you check them at 40, you check them at 45. Maybe if you start having symptoms, there's more of a trend that we can follow, and that actually gives us more information than just a one-time check, if that's helpful. Hopefully that wasn't too much medical stuff, but definitely going in can be helpful, and also looking for other things, as I mentioned previously. But yeah, slowing down, taking time, correcting your sleep, getting enough water. I also covered in another video that I did, the real reasons why you're tired. So you're gonna want to watch that because that actually covers a lot of the reasons why you may be feeling tired, exhausted, burnt out, and overwhelmed. And so I will link that video below. But most importantly, I want you to know that if you are feeling these things, you are not crazy, you are not broken, that there are solutions, right? I think one of the greatest gifts that we have as Black women in this day and age in 2025 is that there are solutions, and that there are options, and that there are treatments. Even if you know people in your family who have experienced perimenopause, like you know of your grandma, your aunties, and your mama, and they may have gone through certain things and experienced certain things, and you may be telling yourself a story about what the experience for you is going to be like. And with that story, you may be ignoring certain things and thinking that you just have to deal with it. And I'm here to tell you that there are options, there are solutions, there are treatments, there are remedies for us as women. This video isn't all about that, but I will share some of that with you in another video. If you're interested, let me know. But especially as it's related to perimenopause, we have so many options, and I want you to know that as a woman, that you do not have to suffer through menopause. And I don't think that that is a story that we should be telling ourselves. And also with burnout, you don't have to suffer with burnout. There are options, there are solutions, there are ways that you can get rest, that you can get free, that you can have some boundaries and live a life that you enjoy. Okay? So thank you so much for staying, for watching this video. Again, if this is something you're interested, please go ahead and leave me a comment below. Let me know what other things you like me to share with you. Otherwise, we're going to be talking a little bit more about maybe some perimenopause, some burnout, things of that nature. So until next time, thank you so much for joining me. Bye.